In the 1960s, the CIA spent around $20 million building the perfect spy. It was a cat. They put a microphone in its ear, a radio transmitter at the base of its skull, and a wire antenna woven into its tail. 5 years of work. Its very first day on the job lasted about 5 minutes. This is Operation Acoustic Kitty, and every word of it is real. To understand how anyone ends up here, you have to understand the problem the CIA could not solve. It was the height of the Cold War, and the agency desperately wanted to hear what Soviet officials were actually saying. But you cannot just plant a bug in a Soviet embassy. They swept their buildings constantly, and they found things. So the real conversations moved outside. Officials would walk out to a park, sit on a bench, and talk there instead. And a park is a terrible place to eavesdrop. There is no wall to hide a bug in, and anyone standing close enough to listen looks exactly like a spy standing close enough to listen. The problem went to the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology. These were the people who built the gadgets. And somebody in that room had an idea that is genuinely kind of brilliant. What is already sitting in every park in the world that nobody ever looks at twice? A cat. Cats wander wherever they want. Cats sit near people. Nobody has ever glanced at a cat and thought, that animal is working for a foreign government. So the plan was simple. Turn a live cat into a walking, self-directed listening device. Astonishingly, this got approved and funded for years. Which brings us to the part where a team of veterinary surgeons had to actually build the thing. A tiny microphone went into the cat's ear canal to pick up whatever the cat happened to be sitting next to. A small radio transmitter was implanted at the base of its skull to send that audio back to a van parked nearby. And then the antenna. A fine wire threaded under the skin along the cat's spine and all the way out into its tail so it stayed completely hidden. There was also a power supply, which had to be small enough to fit inside a cat and last long enough to be useful. None of this existed off the shelf. They had to invent all of it. The result was essentially the world's first cyborg cat. And the surgery was the easy part, because once they switched the cat on and told it where to go, the cat did what cats do. It went wherever it felt like going. Specifically, if it got hungry, it wandered off looking for food, which meant a $20 million surveillance asset would abandon a live operation for a snack. So they went back in. According to accounts from people involved, further work was done to stop the animal from getting distracted by hunger at all. Read that again. The problem was that the cat was a cat, so the solution was to make it slightly less of one. All in, the project ran for roughly 5 years. A former CIA officer later put the total cost at around $20 million. Finally, the cat was ready for its first real assignment. The target was in Washington, D.C. on Wisconsin Avenue. There was a park across from the Soviet compound. 2 men were sitting on a bench there talking. That was the whole job. Sit near them. The team parked an unmarked van nearby, put on their headphones, and got ready to make history. They opened the door and let the cat out. 5 years of research, multiple surgeries, millions of dollars, an entire directorate's worth of engineering. All of it walked out onto a sidewalk in Washington, D.C. And then the cat stepped into the street. A taxi was coming. It did not stop. According to the former CIA officer who told this story, that was the end of Operation Acoustic Kitty. The most expensive spy the agency had ever built was killed by traffic roughly 1 minute into its career without recording anything at all. The team reportedly had to go out and collect the remains because the remains were classified. For decades, this was just a rumor. Then, in 2001, the CIA declassified a memo about the project. It is almost entirely blacked out. What survives is a short, extremely polite note saying the team had proved that, in principle, the concept was possible. And then, just as politely, that it was not practical for their purposes in a real foreign situation, which is government for, we are never doing this again. There is one twist. A later CIA official who ran the office involved has insisted the taxi story is not true, and that the cat was never run over. In his version, the implants were simply removed, the project was quietly dropped as unworkable, and the cat went back to being a cat. Nobody can prove which account is right. And here is the thing. The spy cat was not even the strangest idea in the building. The agency also strapped small cameras to pigeons, which genuinely worked. They built a mechanical dragonfly drone, which flew beautifully right up until it met a light crosswind and was blown completely off course. They trained ravens to fly up to windowsills and drop listening devices on them. That one remarkably worked too. This was an era with effectively unlimited money, a genuine fear of losing, and almost nobody willing to be the person in the room who says this sounds insane. $20 million, 5 years, and a series of surgeries undone in a single second by a taxi that had absolutely no idea what it had just hit.